Hello and welcome everyone to International Environmental Law. This is the beginning of week 2 already, March 20th. There's a very short check-in announcement with a couple of items to discuss. First and foremost, getting in touch with me. I've been in touch with some of you already. I'm at hopkinsj@email.arizona.edu. You will always be able to get me at that address. And as well, if for any reason you need access to other forms of support, please read the syllabus and the course material at the beginning, because they have all of the important contacts that you might require. If, however, for example, you are looking for a response on extensions that are within the context of the class and the time that we have allocated, feel free to make a request to me. And if it's an issue that's more systemic, I can also at the same time work with you and refer you to others within the university system. So that covers how to get in touch with me. Second, I did want to draw your attention to the definition that I provided in a video on international environmental law. I provided 2 definitions. I think they're really useful, and I kind of go through that in the video, so I won't repeat myself. I will put those links into this announcement. It's one just slight technical note. I cannot post within the discussion forums vis-a-vis a live stream video. So right now what I'm doing is I'm using Zoom. It goes to the cloud, and then I either will link to the cloud or off of my clinic YouTube channel, where it's recorded as an MP3 and it'll be in their cloud. So just to quickly reflect on everyone sharing their backgrounds and their interests. Thank you for participating. I've been able to provide some commentary and feedback on that, namely just to let you know that I do read the forums and I do participate. And I think it's a great mix of students that we have. It's also a smaller group, so the advantage for me is that I have more time to work with each of you. One of the salient themes that I got out of the introduction, and then leaning more into the week 1 discussion, concerned water. I'll just quickly tell you, and I'll post additional information on this, that I'm working on a settlement with the Mexican government on behalf of my clients, who are the basis for a clinic here at the law school. So the clients are the Rio Yaqui Pueblos, specifically the traditional authorities of the 8 Rio Yaqui Pueblos. And this settlement is in regards to a petition that I filed 14 years ago that went before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. That is a regional decision human rights body. So they make decisions that are both advisory and binding. And in the case of Mexico, they're binding, because Mexico adopted all of the conventions that are under the Organization of American States, where the Inter-American Commission and the Inter-American Court are housed. So this was a 14-year saga, and I'm pleased at this point to have my clinic working on the draft settlement agreement under the Inter-American system and their rules of procedure. But it ties into many of the things that we're talking about in this class. So I'll revisit that next week at the latest, but I wanted to give you a heads up that some of you might find this interesting, because it's a real life example of what you can find yourself doing in this multidisciplinary field of international environmental law. The other part I just wanted to mention is regarding water. I grew up in Canada. I grew up in Ottawa, the capital city, but also north on the Quebec side of the border. And water was everywhere. And in fact, many of the Algonquin names for what are now little towns and regions are accented with the traditional word for water, because essentially what the water system was for the longest period of time was a highway. So you could easily canoe from one part of the province in Ontario and Quebec to another, and you could do it very quickly. So I took water for granted. That's my point. Until I moved to Arizona, I just thought water was everywhere. And whenever I thought about a water shortage, I just thought, well, they just don't have a lot of water on hand. I knew nothing about groundwater. And at the end of the day, for the entirety of the Southwest going into the Colorado Plateau, water is one of the most perennial issues that you're going to be dealing with, and it can consume an entire career. Um, and so I don't intend to give a long lecture by any means on water and both ground and surface water, but it's fascinating to learn about the dynamics in the hydrological sense that in the end shape so much of the legal side of the discussion. And briefly, I'll provide some photos in the post. The Santa Cruz aquifer is a binational aquifer. I believe it's one of 8 binational aquifers along the southern border with Mexico. Insofar as there might be other aquifers to the far east, with Texas, for example, but the big ones in this part of the United States concern the San Pedro and the Santa Cruz. There's a smaller, very, very small one called the Yaqui Basin. It's a massive basin, but it just has a small thumbprint in the far southeast of Arizona. But the Santa Cruz is relevant to Nogales, Arizona, and it's also relevant to Tucson because it was once the site of the Santa Cruz pathway as it flowed north out of Mexico. And to get right at it, the Santa Cruz, the surface water and the groundwater can have different dynamics. And the Santa Cruz is a really good illustration of that. And I'll show you some photos. We've had a lot of rain, and the Santa Cruz flows north. And so there's an interesting chapter in this story of international environmental law concerning the northern flow of sewage from Nogales, Sonora into Nogales, Arizona. And when it's raining, you can see the over percolation of the groundwater table through what is more or less the drainage systems in Nogales, Sonora. And so I had that opportunity to see that. It's not like, unless you actually know what you're looking at, which is just basically like a little geyser, you don't really think much of it. But the flow of that in the subsurface is significant enough that it was the basis for a number of lawsuits beginning in the 1990s. And in essence, what the case study, I think, illustrates are the challenges of binational regulation of inbound and outbound environmental inputs, if you will. And in the case of groundwater, what was really interesting is the settlement or the resolution was the establishment of the International Wastewater Treatment Plant just north of Nogales, Arizona. And not many people realize what it is or what it does, but it's basically there to hold back the inflow of wastewater from the Nogales, Sonora side. There's some really interesting environmental justice issues tied up with this, and I'm happy to talk about it further. But I just wanted to illustrate this as a very simple point from where I started when I moved here. I remember looking at a Randy McNally map and seeing blue water course through the Tucson Valley, and I thought, wow, this is like moving to the Mediterranean, right? There's beautiful flowing rivers, and I didn't realize the riverbeds were empty with shopping carts. Lastly, behind me is the Rillito. Right now, there's a lot of water flowing through it, so it's just really beautiful. And this is right around the Craycroft Bridge. In fact, it's right on the Craycroft Bridge that you can bike across. And so I just thought I'd share a photo of that with you. The Rillito is a really interesting, you could call it, drainage system. because it collects most of its water from the Catalinas, which are in the backdrop partially there, but the larger mountains that you see are the Rincons. So it collects a lot of runoff and distributes that into the Tucson Valley. The Rito joins up with the Santa Cruz right immediately north of the downtown area. And so we'll get back to talking a little bit more about this area. And I just wanted to, again, welcome you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Final point, if you have any technical questions, as I said in the other announcements, sometimes there's like a little blip that comes up with the quiz. That's the main one. So, and I'm trying to become a D2L expert myself. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, welcome. Thank you.